So you can read it. It's recorded.
Like it's not the problem. Yeah.
No. Buddy?
Hello, everybody. My name is Olivia. I'm kind of the moderator. We're going to start now with Miss Thais. She's going to, you're going to read your book? Or?
Yeah, I'll read it. I'm going to read some excerpts from it. All right, good people, good people. That's so awesome. Thank you for my wonderful students and parents and family. My brother over there only is, as he can do, is yelling at me to go loud. So today I want to share with you a couple of things. And the first thing that I want to share with you is love. And love is the key. And as the students that heard me talk yesterday, love is really important in today's society. So I'll start off a little bit about why I write and what led me to write. Well, for me, my mom was and is a missionary, and she's been traveling mainly throughout the United States to help people. And I grew up, I remember going and being in Harlem where we went to church, and I'm like, why is all these people laying on the floor? What's going on? And I had a heart that just really called out and cried out to people. And I always said, when I get older, I want to be able to help people and inspire lives. And I think that's so fitting for the name that she gave me, which is Thais. It's Greek, meaning giving joy and bringing people together, because we all need joy and we all need to learn to come together no matter what the hardships are in our life, because there will be many as we live. So with that in mind, I have always, once I finished school, I went out the country and I did a lot of mission work where I would go to El Salvador, Dominican Republics to find people who needed inspiration. And not that because they had less, because actually when I went out the country, where we were lacking, they had more. And where we had more, they were lacking. They had a lot of love. And I was telling the students that yesterday, I'm like, good Lord, some of them were living in 10 houses and they had so much joy. And I said, wow, I know people that, people I know, they have everything and they're missing something. So, we exchanged. They taught me something about loving life and enjoying all the important things of life, and then I shared by bringing food and bringing other things with them, and that changed my life and my daughter's life dramatically. And when I came back, I said, wow, this is something that I want to continue. And I went on to kind of like adopt everyone in my family. I mean, my family is so diverse. I said, I want my family to represent all the wonderful things that God has given us, all the different creativity. So, I mean, you have my brother who's German, my daughter Slovakian, and my other daughters are Irish, Italian, and we're just made up of all the wonderful things that God has given on life. And so I started doing that, and I started bringing in teenagers from across the world to come into my home and to work with them to become one, like that melting pot. Boys fell in love with Josephine Baker because she wanted that rainbow tribe family to have everyone. So that was the inspiration for me to go out and write. One of the first books that I wrote is this one right here, which is called One Awesome School. And this was inspired by the students in Orange Avenue. And they don't have that here in the store, but if you take one of the postcards, you can get it online. And One Awesome School was inspired when I began working in Westfield, and I worked in a specialized school with children with severe autism. And when I wanted to see love in action, I just had to look at these children and their families, because these children sometimes didn't recognize people, and how they were treated was really important to me. And when I came to Orange Avenue School, no matter what the differences children came in with, it was such a loving environment. The teachers were loving. It didn't matter if you had tics or whatever. The kids showed love, and I'm like, this is so awesome. This is awesome. And I wrote that book. And going on, when I would go out, and I do go out the country and I speak around the world, I began to look for people who had a lot of inspiration in their life, things that are happening. So people going through hard times in their life. And that was this book right here, Between the Pages, which I wrote about a woman from Harlem. And I'm going to read a little excerpt of her life. And to give you a little background on the woman that I wrote this book about, she's doing wonderful now, but in the beginning of her life, she kind of veered off track. But this is how it started for her. The skin I'm in. Mother, why when we take a bath, we get clean and Joyce stays dirty? My younger siblings yelled across the room as I exited the bathroom. Dirty? I knew I was the darkest of all the children in the family, but I never thought it was dirt. Maybe it was. I rushed back into the bathroom and peered at myself in the mirror. I grabbed the washcloth I had recently left hanging over the tub to dry and pressed it to my face. And with all the strength I can find, I dragged the cloth up and back down my skin. It hurt to press so hard. But if it was dirt that made me so dark, I would get it off even if it killed me. After 10 minutes of scrubbing my face, nothing changed about the color of my skin. I looked around the bathroom to see if there was something else that would help my predicament. I looked in the cabinet under the sink, and there it was, cleansing powder. I sprinkled some on my hand and began to wipe it over my face. I waited. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes passed. After 3 minutes, my face became so sore, and I had to wash the cleansing powder off. Surely this did the trick. I looked in the mirror to see if I would look different. I didn't. My skin was still dark, and my skin was painfully sore. And tears, they filled my eyes as it became clear. It was not the dirt that made me dark. But if my siblings thought I was dirty, wouldn't others? The more I thought about it, the sadder I became. This must be why my kindergarten teacher made me stand at the end of the line and sit in the back of the classroom. She thought I was dirty. How could I help her understand that the darkness of my skin was not dirt? I had the washcloth and the cleansing, the powder to prove it. I tried rinsing my hand once, but I raised my hand and she never looked my way. She just called on the children that sat in front. How about you, sweetie? I was invisible, and there was no escape. That evening, voices in the darkness called me, plagued me. Was I crazy? Dirty girl. The voices were so loud that I didn't know if it was my imagination, a dream, or spirits in my room. Whatever it was, I wasn't going to sleep in the dark anymore. If Mother turned the light off, I waited for her to leave and turned it back on. Eventually, Daddy realized I was turning the light back on. Suspecting something was wrong, he sat down on the side of my bed. What's wrong, Joyce? He asked as he sat next to my bed. Nothing, I lied. What are you afraid of? He continued to inquire. At first, I didn't want to tell him about the voices in the dark, but eventually I confided in him. Don't listen to them. You are my black princess. Daddy was my hero. I was so glad that I told him about the taunting. From then on, he would remind me every night that I was his black princess. This encouraged me because Daddy was the most handsome man in the whole world. And knowing that I was his black princess meant that the voices in the darkness no longer mattered. I did not have to be afraid. Thank you. This is the story of a girl who started off young. She had loving parents, but you know what? She let those outside forces get to her. And as I see some of my wonderful students here, I remind them everything. What's the first thing I say? Hi, my geniuses. Isn't that what I call you every day? Because that's what our children are. There's my daughter there. She can't stand when I get it, but I'm like, how's my princess? Our children need to know that they are special to us because life can be unforgiving. There are people in this world that it doesn't matter. It's just not black skin or light skin. There's always going to be people out there that seeks to hurt you. And so this is the story of Joyce. And she went through some stuff that led her into the darkest places of life, into prostitution, to celebrities, to people in authority, because there's always people out there looking to take a victim. So if we teach our children first to love themselves and know that they can come and conquer over anything, they're going to be great, just like my geniuses that are sitting here. And so this was the story of Joyce, between the pages where trials become triumph. Because whatever you go through in life, there's always escape. And if you don't know how, you come and you talk to me, and I'm going to tell you all about it. So that was the story that I spoke about with Joyce. And I went on and I began to think, who else can I talk about? And with my students right here, and we have my fabulous Jake right there. And as I was working with my students to find things in their lives that they want to talk about, it inspired me. So the teacher becomes the student. And I tell them all the time, Jake always corrects me, like he's like, you know what, you spelled that wrong, or you're missing something. And I'm like, thank you. And it's okay for my students to correct and help the teacher, because we learn from each other. And I want them to know that their voice matters. So with that in mind, I was talking to someone that I admire, my uncle. And as I spoke to him, because my mom doesn't talk too much about her past in the South, I spoke to her brother. And he told me all about it. And what I found out was like, wow, there's more to my history than what books tell me or what society tells me. There's greatness in our history. And that's why it's important to talk to our kids. There's so much that they don't know about our history. And as I was talking to my students and I talked to my daughters, they're like, wow, I didn't know this. Well, if we don't tell them, who will? Because society can sometimes skew things. So good news, Buster on the Southern Path reflects the life and the journey of my uncle, who was in the South and wanted to get out because there were no opportunities for him. And so he finds a way out. And this way seemed to bring with fame and fortune. But guess what? How many of us know that sometimes fame and fortune can take away our purpose? And for those of you that know me, may know that after college, I was offered many recording contracts. And I traveled out, and many things were offered to me. They say, oh, we want you to wear this. And I said, that's not how my mother raised me. I'm not going to wear that. And so I would turn contracts down. I won't wear anything, you know. So that foundation is so important to the lives of our children, even to us. So I said, I'm not going to wear this. I'm not going to do that. So I never signed any of certain contracts. I didn't want to lock in. And I traveled around the world and I sang. So it was like this. Them that sky shall get, them that's not shall lose. For the Bible says, and this still is new. Your mama may have, and your papa, he may have, but God bless the child that's got his own. That's got his own. You know what? Whoa, money. You've got lots of friends. Hey, they're crowding around your door. But when they're gone and the speak delete, they won't be coming around no more. Rich relations game cross the ransom. You can help yourself, but don't you take too much, yeah. 'Cause mama may have, yeah, and your papa, he may have, but God bless the child that's got his own. That's got his own. That's got his own. That's got his own. Here's my lovely, lovely friend there, Bill. Hi, Bill. I love you. Thank you. God bless the child that's got his own. So when things happen in life, you can't always run to your friends or your neighbors. God has a special gift for you, each and every one of you, from the children to the middle age to the older age. Every one of us has a path that we were called to go on. And the key thing is, how do we keep it going? Well, we get around people who are going to inspire us. We got to get away sometimes to the junk news, because that can really pull you down and weigh you down. You got to allow yourself to fly. You've got to allow your wings to go so that you can soar. And one of the things, like I tell my students, I do it at home all the time. Whenever life gives me lemons, I make lemonade. And not only do I keep that lemonade for me, but I share from one person to the next, one person to the next. Because each one teach one, each one can reach one. So with that being said, I'm going to open up if you have any questions for me, because I don't want to take up all the time, because I can talk. You know why? Because I was born with love for everybody. Everybody. And I can love on you all day long. That's right. Any questions for me? Come on, I know most of you know me, but yes?
What authors inspire you?
What authors inspire me? Well, for me, the first and the greatest book that inspires me is the Bible, La Biblia. I always love to read it because that's the first book that shows me of stories that happen and that people going through other just trials and tribulations, but how we can come out. Other than that, one of the authors that I really like to read is, her name is Beverly Lewis, and she's an Amish writer. I love the Amish life because I really, the simple things in life. You can have so much, you can have money, you can have that. I tell my students, I'm not in school teaching because I have to teach. And there are many people that are in the school because they're looking for a paycheck. I can make more money. I ran my own company in New York. I did films. I had a TV show. But none of that means anything to me. It's the simple things in life, and that's love. That's love. That's having each of you here seeing these pictures. I'm like, my celebrities, look at them. You guys are my heroes. You're my celebrities. And so with Beverly Lewis, she writes these stories about the simple things in life, about simpleness and how love forms, how people overcome trials. And so I read her all the time. I don't really care for drama. I'm not a drama person because life always has that. I'm always trying to find, how do I overcome drama? They always say that the grave is the richest place in the world because people die with dreams. Well, I pray that each and every one of you that's sitting here, from the smallest to the oldest, that's not your story. But that when you die and when I die, that our graves are empty of promises because we fulfill them all in life. Any other questions? Yes?
Can you tell us more specifics about the book, your uncle's journey, and can you read maybe the short passage to us, please?
Certainly, will do. So I'm not going to tell you too much because I want you to get the book. But I will read one of the samples out of Bus's book, which I find really interesting. First, I'll read the back so you can hear that. Good News Buster highlights the early years of Roosevelt Johnson, a spiritual patriarch of present-day truth who was born after the Great Depression. A descendant of sharecroppers and self-made businessman with deep spiritual roots, Roosevelt is determined to find a way out of the oppressive South. When an opportunity to perform secular music at the Apollo Theater in Harlem surfaces, Roosevelt takes a chance, veering from his call to the gospel and promising himself he'll return. Will the prospect of earthly gain drown out his inner voice? And I'm going to read one of the chapters here that I find interesting and that my students usually like. Mischief. Okay, here we go. Pecan colored and peacock proud. I realized that growing up in the 1940s and 1950s had its perks. And it wasn't just because heavyweight boxing champion Joe Louis was whipping butts of all colors in the ring, giving people of color something to be proud of. This brown bomber, as he was known, rose up from the ashes like nobody's business. And like Papa Johnson's dad, Joe's dad was a sharecropper, gleaning food and splitting the soil. It didn't matter none because Joe's past couldn't hold him down. He went from the amateur world heavyweight boxing champion and stayed there over 10 years. Yeah, Joe did us proud and made my childhood memorable. But he wasn't alone on that platform. There was something else that made my childhood memorable. School. And all the students say, yeah. I attended Stonehill Elementary School in Sumter. Every day we had prayer, Bible study, and sang songs about the goodness of the Lord. These activities were a part of the day called devotion. I love devotion because I got to do two of my favorite things, study the Bible and sing the good news. Something about having the good news at school made learning wonderful. And like one of Mama's buttery biscuit on a plate of chicken liver grits and homemade gravy, I sopped up everything I was taught. I learned so fast that my teachers skipped me from the first grade to the third grade. Now, even though having your child in a class with older students has always been a concern for some, it wasn't for Mama. She was okay with it. No one was going to take advantage of me. I could speak up for myself. Besides, being with older kids wasn't the problem. Fact is, like most kids, sometimes I was good and sometimes I misbehaved. For example, prior to being skipped, you see, one day Mama told me to stay in the house while she went out to work. I heard her, but I just didn't listen. And after she left, I snuck out to play with two of my buddies. We decided to go by Monk's house and make mischief. Monk was a gal from school that lived up the road. And sneakily, we walked the trodden path. As we got closer, we heard the faint giggles of Monk and some other young gals. Moving closer, we saw they were playing house. And they were so engaged that they didn't hear us. Great. The creases in the corners of my mouth slid upwards as I turned to my buddies and declared, let's have some fun, boys. Kick that house down, I replied. Then I snuck up close and I kicked the first thing in sight. Buster Johnson, Monk yelled furiously as her hands closed tightly. My buddies and I didn't hang around to watch if the other gals responded. We took off running. I didn't recall which one did it, but one of the gals picked up a brick and threw it. Bam! Help! This time it wasn't one of the girls' voices I heard. It was my own voice coming from deep within me. You see, 1 minute I was running under the blue sky, and the next moment, everything went dark. You see, darkness became an unwanted companion that could come to me like glue. And when I awakened, I learned that the brick had hit my spine. A trauma that caused me to go completely blind within 3 months. Blind? Blind? I was just 7 years old. And to add to the misery, the doctor told Mama that I might never get my eyesight back. We just had to wait, to hope, and to pray. Normally, I might have gotten a switch for this stunt of disobedience, but Mama didn't beat or punish me. I guess going blind was punishment in itself. Not to mention the agony that the light outside just burned my eyes, and my eyes, they hurt so bad. There were days that I refused to come from under the bed because the light was hurting me. So there I was home and in the house after all. And neither Dad nor Mama had enough money to send me to school for the blind. So for a whole year, I stayed indoors, imagining what my friends were doing outside. And that was pretty bad for an active boy. But at least I could still hear the good news being sung at home and at church. Old Buster used to get into trouble. And he's a big bishop now, so I like to say yeah. Yeah, and guess what? When you get older, there'll be days when you can look at your parents and I'm going to say, yeah. So with that, I think of one song that he would sing all the time, Good News. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Yeah, that was me. Any other questions? Yes, sir? Yeah, that was my uncle. And I'm like, yeah, can you tell me more about my mother? Because I'm going to write a book about her next. But I probably can't do that while she's alive because she'll get the switch. Back in the days, they used to get something off the trees. And you guys don't know anything about getting a butt cutting. But yeah, I only had to get it done one time. And she ain't never have a problem out of me. Any other questions? Yes? I have been writing. Now, I started when I was your age because I had a teacher like me. And I would always write. And what do I tell you to do all the time? I tell you to have a book and write down your stories all the time. And I started writing those stories. And the good thing with you is, because whenever you want to write a story, you got me right in your corner. And we put it out there like we're going to do at the end of the year. With some of my classes, last year we do books. We don't put them out in the stores. If the parents want to, they can. But I encourage them, every one of them and every one of you are budding authors, if you can't be. And so I've been writing since I was younger, but I spent a lot of my time pushing everyone else's life. I was going out there saying, you have a dream? Do you have a dream? What's your dream? And then I would work hard in making people's dream come true. Because I've always been more concerned about everybody else trying to help them than trying to fulfill my own dream. And then it was just the last couple of years ago where I felt, you know what, Tyrese? You know, you're not in your 30s, the 40s are going, you know, It's time to do some things. So I have these books out. I'm actually preparing some off-Broadway productions to go on, some more films to go on, and I'm not going to leave my students. So it's a great thing about teaching on my when I come home from work, I'm like tunnel vision. I'm writing on the in the summers. I'm writing. Read and write. You know, Jared, I tell y'all that all the time. Read, write. Any other questions, Jess?
What did your uncle think when he read the book after you
He
published
was
it?
tickled pink. He was really excited about this, and you know, I know he wish he could be here today, but he's busy having a service, so he's not there. Yes. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm not gonna take the time because we have someone else, but Barnes and Nobles, they have copies here. So these, if you want copies of this book, feel free to grab it. If you need to leave early, grab it, and you can pay for these at the counter. They didn't have this book in, which is it's not a child's book because she goes through some really deep stuff. You can see me if you want a copy of this. If you want good news, it's on the website, and you can get that. And I have some business cards out here. If you didn't get them, pick it up. I love you guys. That's right. And I know most of you, but it doesn't matter. The ones that I don't know, I love you too. Because the same God that created me created you. And if there's anything that I can do to make your life better, here I am, your humble servant.
Thank you.